Today we're going to be taking a look at Jeremiah's 70-year prophecy. It's a very amazing prophecy in that it details pretty much exactly what's going to happen in the Middle East over a 70-year period. The 70-year prophecy of Jeremiah is one of the more interesting misunderstood prophecies. Often people look at only one or two texts without looking at the overall picture, or they take an assumption the church has made about this prophecy and try to read that assumption into the text. This leads to confusing and complex interpretations, especially when trying to line up the prophecy with established history. Now here we will strive to look at the big picture presented in the scriptures and see what they actually say, and not what we assume. First, we must understand that while Jeremiah 25 contains the first full description of this prophecy, its origins go back much further. In the 13th year of the reign of Josiah, Jeremiah began to prophesy about Babylonian dominance over the Middle East. Jeremiah chapter 1, verses 1 through 3, and also verses 14 and 15. The words of Jeremiah, the son of Hilkiah, the priests that were in Anathoth in the land of Benjamin, to whom the word of Jehovah came in the days of Josiah, the son of Ammon, king of Judah, in the 13th year of his reign. It came also in the days of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, unto the end of the 11th year of Zedekiah, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, unto the carrying away of Jerusalem in the captive in the 5th month. The point of that, verses 1 through 3, is that we're starting off in the 13th year of Josiah. Now, verses 14 and 15 says, Then Jehovah said unto me, Out of the north evil shall break forth upon all the inhabitants of the land. For lo, I will call all the families of the kingdoms of the north, saith Jehovah. And they shall come, and they shall set every one his throne at the entrance of the gates of Jerusalem, and against all the walls thereof round about, and against all the cities of Judah. So Jeremiah began prophesying about these events all the way back in the 13th year of Josiah. And this is a map of what the Assyrian Empire looked like at the time. The Neo-Assyrian Empire lasted for centuries until the Babylonians defeated them and destroyed their capital in 610 BCE. Now, the Egyptians made an unsuccessful attempt to help their Assyrian allies retake Haran and reestablish the empire. Haran was the capital. The decisive battle was fought in 609 BCE. The Egyptians managed to gain control of some of the former territory of Assyria, but the Assyrian Empire itself ceased to exist. Thus, 609 BCE marks the beginning of the Babylonian Empire and its dominance over the Middle East. Now, in 605 BCE, Nebuchadnezzar defeated the Egyptians at Carchemish. Upon his return, he was crowned king on September 23, 605 BCE. Now, it was during this campaign they laid siege to Jerusalem and carried away Daniel and many others captive to Babylon. Daniel 1 verses 1 and 2 says, In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem, and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand with part of the vessels of the house of God, and he carried them into the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. Now we can establish this timeline from scriptures because it states in Jeremiah 25:1 that the 4th year of Jehoiakim coincided with the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar. And Daniel 1:1 says the siege happened in the 3rd year of Jehoiakim. Now Jeremiah reminded, and the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar was after he was crowned king, after when he returned from that battle. Now Jeremiah reminded the people of Jerusalem that he had been prophesying about this since the time of Josiah. He also expanded on it to include much more detail. In this prophecy, he said that all of the surrounding nations would serve Babylon for 70 years. At the end of 70 years, Babylon would be defeated. Notice the 70 years designates the period of Babylonian dominance. It is not about the time of Jerusalem's destruction, or the length of the exile. Also notice the 70 years ends with the destruction of Babylon. It does not extend to the return of the Jews to Jerusalem. The 70 years was not actually about the exile. We'll see how that plays into things a little bit later on. In Jeremiah 25, chapter 25, the word of the Lord, the word that came to Jeremiah concerning all the peoples of Judah in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah. The same was the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, which Jeremiah the prophet spake unto all the people of Judah, and unto all the inhabitants of Jerusalem, saying, From the 13th year of Josiah, the son of Ammon, king of Judah, even unto this day, these 23 years, the word of Jehovah hath come unto me, and I have spoken unto you, rising up early and speaking, but ye have not hearkened. And Jehovah hath sent unto you all his servants the prophets, rising up early and sending them, but ye have not hearkened, nor inclined your ear to hear, saying, Return ye now every one from his evil way, and from the evil of your doings, and dwell in the land that Jehovah hath given unto you and to your fathers, from of old even forever, and even forevermore. And go not after other gods to serve them, and to worship them, and provoke me not to anger, with the works of your hands, and I will do you no hurt. Yet ye have not hearkened unto me, saith Jehovah, that ye may provoke me to anger with the work of your hands to your own hurt. Therefore thus saith Jehovah of hosts, because ye have not heard my words, behold, I will send and take all the families of the north, saith Jehovah, and I will send unto Nebuchadnezzar the king of Babylon, my servant, and I will bring them against this land, and against the inhabitants thereof, and against all these nations round about. It's not just Jerusalem or Judah, it's all the nations round about. And I will utterly destroy them, and make them an astonishment, and a hissing, and a perpetual desolation. Moreover, I will take from them the voice of mirth, and the voice of gladness, and the voice of the bridegroom, and the voice of the bride, and the sound of millstone, the light of the lamp. And this whole land shall be a desolation and an astonishment, and these nations, not this nation, but these nations, plural, all the nations around them, shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. It's about Babylonian dominance over the nations of the Middle East. It becomes even clearer in a second. And it shall come to pass, when 70 years are accomplished, that I will punish the king of Babylon, and that nation, saith Jehovah, for their iniquity, and the land of the Chaldeans I will make desolate forever. Notice the Babylonian destruction happens after the end of the 70 years. So the 70 years cannot be about the exile, because the exile ended after the Babylonian destruction. It ended after the Persians allowed them to return. But it says here that the Babylonian destruction happens after the 70 years are finished. So the 70 years are finished, then the Babylonian destruction, and then the return from exile. So the 70 years does not extend all the way into the return from exile. And I'll bring upon that land all my words which I have pronounced against it, even all that is written in this book, which Jeremiah hath prophesied against all the nations. For many nations and great kings shall make bondmen of them, even of them, and I'll recompense them among them according to their deeds, and according to the work of their hands. For thus saith Jehovah the God of Israel unto me, Take this cup of the wine of wrath in my hand, and cause all these nations to whom I send thee to drink it, and they shall drink it, and reel to and fro, and be mad, because of the sword I will send among them. Then I took the cup at Jehovah's hand, and made all the nations to drink, unto whom Jehovah had sent me, to wit, Jerusalem is one of them, and the cities of the kings of Judah, and the kings thereof, and the princes thereof, to make them a desolation, and astonishment, a hissing, and a curse, as it is this day. But also Pharaoh king of Egypt, and his servants, and his princes, and all his peoples, and all the mingled peoples, and all the kings of the land of Uz, and all the kings of the Philistines, and Ashkelon, and Gaza, and Ekron, and the remnants of Ashdod, Edom, and Moab, and the children of Ammon, all the kings of Tyre, and all the kings of Sidon, and the kings of the isle, which is beyond the sea, Dedan, and Tema, and Buz, and all the corners of their hair cut off, and all the kings of Arabia, and all the kings of the mingled people that dwell in the wilderness, and all the kings of Zimri, and all the kings of Elam, and all the kings of Medes, and all the kings of the north, far and near, one to another, and all the kingdoms of the world, which are upon the face of the earth. And the land of Shishak shall drink after them. Note, this is all of the kingdoms in the Near East. It's not just about Jerusalem, so it's not about the 70 years is not actually addressing the exile directly. It includes the exile, but it's not 70 years about the exile. Thus shall he say unto them, thus saith Jehovah of hosts, the God of Israel, drink ye, and be drunken, and spew, and fall, and rise no more, because of the sword which I will send among you. Now here's a map of the Neo-Babylonian Empire after it had destroyed the Assyrians. Jehoiakim decided not to pay the required tribute to Nebuchadnezzar and promptly died during the winter of 598-597 BCE. Jehoiakim, also known as Jeconiah, succeeded him. Nebuchadnezzar laid siege to Jerusalem and carried many of the Jews into captivity in 597 BCE. Now Jeremiah sent them a letter telling them that they would remain in Babylon until after the 70 years of Babylonian dominance. Jeremiah 29, verses 1 through 10. Now these are the words of the letter that Jeremiah the prophet sent from Jerusalem unto the residue of the elders of the captivity, and to the priests, and to the prophets, and to all the people whom Nebuchadnezzar carried away captive from Jerusalem to Babylon. After that Jeconiah the king, and the queen mother, and the eunuchs, and all the princes of Judah and Jerusalem, and the craftsmen, and the smiths were departed from Jerusalem. Thus by the hand of Elisah the son of Shaphan, and Gemariah the son of Hilkiah, whom Zedekiah king of Judah sent into Babylon, to Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon. And it was saying, thus saith Jehovah of hosts, the God of Israel, unto all the captivity whom I have caused to be carried away captive from Jerusalem unto Babylon, build ye houses, and dwell in them, and plant gardens, and eat the fruit of them. Take ye wives, and beget sons and daughters, and take wives for your sons, and give your daughters to husbands, that they may bear daughters, and multiply ye there, and be not diminished. And seek the peace of the city, whither I have caused you to be carried away captive, and pray unto Jehovah for it. For in the peace thereof shall ye have peace. For thus saith Jehovah of hosts, the God of Israel, let not your prophets that are in the midst of you, and your diviners deceive you, neither hearken ye unto their dreams, which ye cause to be dreamed. For they prophesy falsely unto you in my name. I have not sent them, saith Jehovah. For thus saith Jehovah, after 70 years are accomplished for Babylon, I will visit you and perform my good will toward you, in causing you to return to this place. Now some translations render the key phrase 70 years are accomplished for Babylon as 70 years are accomplished at Babylon, or something similar. Now the Hebrew word here is lababel. Throughout the Bible, this phrase is usually translated as for Babylon or unto Babylon. Most English translations render it this way in this verse. Now it seems this really does seem to be the most accurate way to translate it, because that's the way it's translated everywhere else. But most importantly, this rendering lines up better with Jeremiah's prophecy in chapter 25, because it's 70 years of Babylonian dominance over the Middle East. So this translation, 70 years are accomplished for Babylon, for them to dominate the Middle East, more closely lines up with what Jeremiah prophesied earlier. So that gives it the most internal consistency within the book of Jeremiah. Now the people incur the fury of God, so that God sent the Chaldeans, the Babylonians, to conquer Jerusalem. In 2 Chronicles 36, verses 15 through 17, it says, And Jehovah, the God of their fathers, sent to them by his messengers, rising up early and sending, because he had compassion on his people and upon his dwelling place. But they mocked the messengers of God, and despised his words, and scoffed at his prophets, until the wrath of Jehovah rose against them, until there was no remedy. Therefore he brought upon them the king of the Chaldeans, and slew the young men with the sword in the house of the sanctuary, and gave no compassion unto young man or virgin, old man or hoary-headed. He gave them all into his hand. Nebuchadnezzar laid siege to Jerusalem for 18 months. It finally fell on July 29, 587 BCE. This means that the siege began in January 588 BCE, and God's wrath mentioned in the text above began around 589 BCE, because that'd be the months leading up to January 588. The date of July 29, 587 BCE corresponds to the 9th day of the 5th month of Av. The date is arrived this way. The walls were breached on the 9th day of the 4th month. The Babylonians set fire to the temple on the 7th day of the 5th month, according to 2 Kings 25, and the 10th day of the 5th month, according to Jeremiah 52. This discrepancy is resolved by understanding that the fire lasted several days. It is generally stated it is taking place on the 9th day of the 5th month of Av, hence July 29, 587 BCE. Now, 2 Kings chapter 25 describes it this way. And it came to pass in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, in the 10th day of the month, that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came, he and all his army, against Jerusalem, and encamped against it. And they built forts against it round about. So the city was besieged until the 11th year of Zedekiah. On the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine was sore in the city, so that there was no bread for the people of the land. Then a breach was made in the city, and all the people of war fled by night by way of the gate between the two walls, which was by the king's garden. Now the Chaldeans were against the city round about, and the king went by the way of Arabah. But the army of the Chaldeans pursued after the king, and overtook him in the plains of Jericho, and all his army was scattered from him. And they took the king, and carried him up under the king of Babylon at Riblah, and they gave judgment upon him. And they slew the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes, and put out the eyes of Zedekiah, and bound him in fetters, and carried him to Babylon. Now on the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, which is the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, a servant to the king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem. And he burnt the house of Jehovah, and the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem, even a very great fire, even every great house he burnt with fire. And Jeremiah 52 describes it this way. And it came to pass in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, and 10th day of the month, that Nebuchadrezzar, king of Babylon, came, he and all his army, against Jerusalem, and encamped against it, and they built forts against it round about. So the city was besieged in the 11th year of the king of Zedekiah. In the 4th month, and in the 9th day of the month, the famine was sore in the city, so that there was no bread for the people of the land. Then a breach was made in the city, and all the men of war fled, and went forth out of the city by night by way of the gate between the two walls, which was by the king's garden. Now the Chaldeans were against the city round about, and they went toward Arabah. But the army of the Chaldeans pursued after the king, and overtook Zedekiah in the plains of Jericho, and all his army was scattered from him. And then they took the king, and carried him up unto the king of Babylon, to Riblah in the land of Hamath, and gave judgment upon him. And the king of Babylon slew the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes. And he slew also the princes of Judah and Riblah. And he put out the eyes of Zedekiah, and the king of Babylon bound him in fetters, and carried him to Babylon, and put him in prison till the day of his death. Now on the 5th month, and the 10th day of the month, was before in Kings it says 7th day of the month, here it says 10th day of the month, which was the 19th year of King Nebuchadrezzar, king of Babylon, came Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, who stood before the king of Babylon, into Jerusalem. And he burned the house of Jehovah, and the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem, even every great house he burned with fire. And all the army of the Chaldeans that were with the captain of the guard brake down all the walls of Jerusalem round about. Then Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, carried away captive of the poorest people and the residue of the people that were left in the city. And those that fell away, that fell into the king of Babylon, and the residue of the multitude. But Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, left of the poorest of the land to be vine dressers and husbandmen. And that's why they generally date it to the 9th month, because it took several days to burn. That's why we assume that Kings mentions the 7th day of the month, and Jeremiah mentions the 10th day of the month. And Chronicles records this way. And them that escaped from the sword he carried away to Babylon, and they were servants with him until the reign of the kingdom of Persia, to fulfill the words of Jehovah by the mouth of Jeremiah until the land had obeyed its Sabbaths, for as long as it lay desolate it kept Sabbath, to fulfill 70 years, or 70 years. Now in the first year of the king of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of Jehovah by the mouth of Jeremiah might be accomplished, Jehovah stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, so they made a proclamation throughout all the kingdom, and put it also in writing, saying, Thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, Unto all the kingdoms of the earth hath Jehovah the King, God of heaven, given unto me, and he hath charged me to build him a house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Whosoever there is among you of all the people, Jehovah his God be with him, and let him go up. Now, the key verses here is verse 21 says, To fulfill the word of Jehovah by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed its Sabbaths. For as long as it lay desolate, it kept the Sabbath, to fulfill 70 years. Now, if someone just reads this passage, just that passage, without first reading the entire prophecy in Jeremiah, they might reasonably come to the conclusion that the land kept Sabbath for 70 years. In other words, the entire exile lasted for 70 years. Now, an examination of the prophecy in Jeremiah will show that not a single word is mentioned about the land keeping Sabbaths. So where does this idea come from? It's not part of the prophecy. This comes from Leviticus chapter 26. It says, And I will make starting verse 31, And I will make your cities a waste, and I will bring your sanctuaries unto desolation, and I will not smell the savor of your sweet odors. And I will bring the land into desolation, and your enemies that dwell therein shall be astonished at it. And I will scatter among the nations, and I will draw out the sword after you, and your land shall be a desolation, and your cities shall be a waste. This is the curse if they don't obey God. Then shall the land enjoy its Sabbaths, as long as it layeth desolate in your enemy's land. Even then shall the land rest, and enjoy its Sabbaths. As long as it lieth desolate, it shall have rest, even the rest which it had not in your Sabbaths when ye dwelt in it. And as for them that are left of you, I will send a faintness into their heart in the lands of their enemies, and the sound of a driven leaf shall chase them, and they shall flee as one fleeth from the sword. They shall fall when none pursueth, and they shall stumble upon one another, as it were before the sword, when none pursueth. And ye shall have no power to stand before your enemies, and ye shall perish among the nations, and the land of your enemies shall eat you, and they that are left of you shall pine away their iniquity in the enemy's lands, and also in their iniquities of their fathers shall they pine away with them. And here's one of the keys. And they shall confess their iniquity, and the iniquity of their fathers, and their trespass which they trespassed against me. And also that, because they walked contrary to me, I also walked contrary unto them, and brought them into the land of their enemies. If then their uncircumcised hearts be humbled, and they accept of the punishment of their iniquity, then I will remember my covenant with Jacob, and also my covenant with Isaac, and also my covenant with Abraham will I remember, and I will remember the land. Notice what it says here. It says, He'll send them into exile, and the land will enjoy the Sabbaths. And then when the time of the exile is finished, if and only if they confess their iniquity, then God will remember them. By examining both prophecies, we can see that the writer of 2 Chronicles is saying that the land also enjoyed the Sabbaths until the 70 years of Jeremiah's prophecy was fulfilled. It doesn't mean, it's not saying that the land enjoyed Sabbaths for 70 years. It's saying they enjoyed the Sabbaths until the 70 years were finished. The 70 years began before the exile, but the land enjoyed the Sabbaths until the 70 years were finished. Jeremiah's letter to the captives in Jeremiah 29 says that they would remain in Babylon until after the 70 years were fulfilled. Notice that the prophecy in Leviticus does not say that God will automatically restore them to the land. it says that God will remember them if they confess their iniquity. This explains why Daniel confesses the iniquity of the people in Daniel 9 when he saw that the 70 years had been fulfilled. Look at the first few verses of Daniel 9. It says they saw that the 70 years of Jeremiah's prophecy were fulfilled, and then he begins to confess the iniquity of the people to God. This is why. Because Daniel knew that the restoration could not happen until after the 70 years were finished, and also the iniquity was confessed. Now, many people assume that Nebuchadnezzar took all the Jews to Babylon. The Bible says he only took some of them. The passage from Jeremiah 52 above clearly states that Nebuchadnezzar left the poor people to take care of the land. And Jeremiah 40 through 42 continues the story of the people in Judah. It provides a detailed account of the life of the Jews in Judah after the destruction of Jerusalem. Now, when the 70 years of Babylonian dominance were finished, God notified the king that the time was fulfilled, and Babylon was going to be punished, just as Jeremiah prophesied. In Daniel 5:5 it says, "In the same hour came the fingers of a man's hand, and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace, and the king saw the part of the hand that wrote." And Daniel interpreted the words to the king. And later on, starting verse 18, "O thou king, the Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar thy father the kingdom, greatness and glory and majesty, and because of the greatness that he gave him, all the peoples and the nations and languages trembled and feared before him, whom he slew, and whom he kept alive, and whom he raised up, and whom he would put down. But when his heart was lifted up, and his spirit was hardened, so that he dealt proudly, he was deposed from his kingly throne, and took his glory from him. He was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the beasts, and his dwelling was with the wild asses, and he was fed with grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, until he knew that the Most High God ruleth in the kingdom of men, and he setteth up over it whomsoever he will." If you remember, this is recorded in Daniel chapter 4. Nebuchadnezzar went insane for a while until he was humbled. "And thou, O son Belshazzar, hast not humbled thy heart, though thou knewest all this, but hast lifted up thyself against the Lord of heaven, and they have brought the vessels of the house before thee, and thy lords, thy wives and thy concubines have drunk wine from them. And thou hast praised the gods of silver and of gold, and brass and iron, and wood and stone, which see not, nor hear, nor know, and the God in thy land, in his hand thy breath is, and whose are all thy ways, hast thou not glorified. Then was the part of the hand sent before him, and this writing was inscribed. And this is the writing that was inscribed, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Mene, God hath numbered thy kingdom, and brought it to an end. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances, and found wanting. Paris, thy kingdom is divided, and given unto the Medes and Persians. Then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with purple, and put a chain of gold about his neck, and made a proclamation concerning him, that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. And that night Belshazzar the Chaldean was slain, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being about 62 years old. Now the Persians began the rule over Babylon on October 12, 539 BCE. Now in Daniel chapter 9, remember, says in this way, "In the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, of the seed of the Medes, who was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans, in the first year of the reign, I, Daniel, understood by the books the number of the years that were, whereof the word of Jehovah came to Jeremiah the prophet, for the accomplishing of the desolations of Jerusalem, even 70 years." Now, so he understood that the 70 years that Jeremiah prophesied were finished, and the desolations of Jerusalem would be accomplished within that 70 years. Now note that this Darius is the Darius mentioned in Daniel 5, who is made king over the Chaldeans alone. It's not Darius the emperor over whole Persian Empire. This is not Darius the first, who ruled over the entire Persian Empire. Daniel understood that the desolations of Jerusalem would continue until the 70 years of Jeremiah's prophecy were fulfilled. He saw that the 70 years were finished because God had punished Babylon. Daniel also knew from the prophecy in Leviticus 26 that the land would keep the Sabbaths until the people confess their iniquity. So Daniel begins a long, heartfelt prayer to God, confessing the iniquity of the people and asking him to remember them. Now, the Bible gives several indicators that Jerusalem fell around 587 BCE. Darius I became king over the Persian Empire in 522 BCE. Counting from the year of his ascension makes his second year in 520 BCE. In 520 BCE, the prophet Haggai asked the people who remember the first temple how it compared to the new temple they were building. This is 19 years after the fall of Babylon. If Jerusalem were destroyed in 587 BCE, they would be in the late 70s, in order to be old enough to remember the first temple. If Jerusalem was destroyed at the beginning of the 70-year prophecy, which would be 609 BCE, these men would be in the late 90s would have to be in the late 90s in order to remember it. So it's very unlikely that they both would still be alive, and most importantly would have been able to make the journey from Babylon back to Jerusalem at that age. Even not that many 70-year-olds would be able to do it, but 90-year-olds would be very unlikely. Haggai 1:1 says, in the second year of Darius the king, and Haggai 2 continues on, in the 7th month, in the 1 and 20th day of the month, came the word of Jehovah by Haggai the prophet, saying, Speak now to Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, the governor of Judah, and to Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest, and to the remnant of the people, saying, Who is left among you who saw this house in its former glory, who saw the first temple? And how do you see it now? Is it not in your eyes as nothing? In the same year, Zechariah had a vision and asked God why he was so angry with Jerusalem. He mentions that his anger had been going on for 70 years. This prophecy comes at the end of the 11th month. Now the Jewish calendar counts its months from spring to spring. The religious calendar starts in the first month of Nisan in the spring. The civil calendar starts at the beginning of the 7th month of Tishri in the fall. So you've got both a kind of a spring to spring and fall to fall calendar. The 11th month of the second year of Darius by the Jewish calendar would place it around February 519 BCE. This perfectly aligns with the statement in Chronicles 36, chapter 36, verse 16 to 17, that the full fury of God against Jerusalem began before the 18-month siege. This siege began in January 588 BC. This means that God's fury began around 589 BCE. So 589 down to 519 is exactly 70 years. Zechariah chapter 1 verses 7 through 12. Upon the 4th and 20th day of the 11th month, which is the month of Shebat, in the second year of Darius, came the word of Jehovah unto Zechariah the son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo the prophet, saying, I saw in the night, and behold, a man riding upon a red horse, and he stood among the myrtle trees that were in the bottom. And behold, behind him were his horses red, sorrel, and white. Then said I, O my Lord, what are these? And the angel that talked with me said unto me, I will show thee what these are. And the man that stood among the myrtle trees answered and said, These are they whom Jehovah has sent to walk to and fro throughout the earth. And they answered the angel of Jehovah that stood among the myrtle trees and said, We have walked to and fro throughout the earth, and behold, all the earth sitteth still and is at rest. And the angel of Jehovah answered and said, O Jehovah of hosts, how long wilt thou not have mercy on Jerusalem and on the cities of Judah, which thou hast had indignation these 70 years? The 70 years God was angry with Jerusalem for 70 years. Now the 9th month of Kislev, spelled here Kislev, which is around December, in the 4th year of Darius, which would be 518 BCE, Zechariah received a prophecy that mentioned the people had been fasting in the 5th month and 7th month for 70 years. Now, if you remember back in Jeremiah 52, it says the temple was burdened in the 5th month. We assume that the people fasted in mourning when the temple was burned and continued it annually. Then 518. If we can assume that, then 518 BCE would be the 70th annual fast. Now, I'm not certain why they fasted in the 7th month. I'm sure there's many historians that might be able to get into that. But of course, the Day of Atonement is in the 7th month, which requires 1 day of fasting. We can date the 4th year of Darius of 518 BCE. And God testified that the people had been mourning the destruction of Jerusalem for 70 years. And it came to pass in the 4th year of Darius the king that the word of Jehovah came into Zechariah in the 4th day of the 9th month, even in Kislev. Now they of Bethel sent Sherazar, Regem, and Malach, and their men to entreat the favor of Jehovah, and to speak unto the priests of the house of Jehovah of hosts, unto the prophets, saying, Should I weep in the 5th month, separating myself, as I have done these so many years? Then the word of Jehovah of hosts, then came the word of Jehovah of hosts unto me, saying, Speak unto all the people of the land, and to the priests, saying, When ye have fasted and mourned in the 5th month and the 7th month, even these 70 years, did ye fast at all unto me, even to me? So, from 587 down to 518, this would be the 70th annual if you begin the first one on the day that it actually fell. This would be the 70th time that the fast has taken place. Now we can see how the prophecies line up perfectly when we read what the Bible actually says and let it interpret itself. The Bible gives exactly how the 70 years, there was 70 years of Babylonian dominance, and when you take all of the different references into consideration, don't just pick 1 and 2, you can see that the 70 years was 70 years of Babylonian dominance. The destruction of Jerusalem did happen in 587 BCE. You've got both references to it and historical references to the actual, that help you line up the actual destruction, along with references in the prophets later that would only make sense if it did take place in 587 BCE. The 70 years is not actually 70 years of the exile, but the exile would take place until the 70 years are finished. And by saying that, you're not saying that the exile was 70 years, but it would finish when the 70 years were finished. So that's why people kind of get confused there, thinking that the exile itself lasted 70 years. But just take all of it into consideration, and then you can see how it does line up perfectly with the historical record. So this is a pretty amazing prophecy here, and the historical record has backed up everything that it says. The only thing that's kind of debated is whether or not there was someone ruling over the Chaldeans named Darius when Cyrus first conquered, but that's another discussion. But that's about the only thing that's really kind of in the text that we hear, that there's a lot of there's much difficulty with the historical record, because a lot of the historians don't agree with that, but there actually is some historical evidence for that, but get into that another time, because right here we're just focusing on the 70 years. So anyways, thank you, and may God bless you, and please study the scriptures, put your faith in the scriptures alone. Don't take anything that's said for granted. Look everything up. Whatever you can see that is presented here, whatever you can see that the scriptures actually support, believe that. If you can't quite see it, then set it aside until such time as you can see that the scriptures support it. Thank you.